People pleasing is just fear dressed up as kindness. It's not selflessness, it's self-abandonment. Do I want to keep making other people comfortable at the expense of myself? No. Do I want to keep abandoning myself just so I can be easy to keep around? Absolutely not. No, you do not want to continue to be that way. I'm going to answer it for you. And have you ever noticed that the people who respect you the least are usually the ones you've done the most for? Welcome to the Upgrade with Elle. Okay, so what if I told you that being the easy friend isn't actually a compliment? Being the low maintenance partner, it's not a flex. Being the chill family member that never really asks for much, it's not actually something to be proud of. I know that may come as a surprise, but what it actually means is that you've trained people to see you as the most convenient person in their life. And let me tell you something, people don't respect convenience. They just get used to it. This episode is for the ones who keep swallowing their opinions, for the ones who say, it's fine, when it's really not. I was one of them. For the ones who don't want to be a burden, so they carry everything else in silence. For the ones who keep making themselves smaller, softer, quieter, just to keep the peace. You've convinced yourself that your needs can wait, that you're easy to love because you're easy to handle. But I want to ask you something right now. What did it cost you to become the convenient one? What did it cost you? Because maybe it cost you your boundaries. Maybe it cost you your peace. Maybe it cost you your voice. And if you are really honest with yourself, maybe you don't even know what you actually want anymore because you've spent your whole life being who everyone else needed you to be, not who you actually wanted to be. And if that's you, if there's any part of this that hits you in the chest, I want you to keep listening because today we're breaking down the hidden cost of being the convenient blank. You fill in the blank. And by the end of this episode, I promise you that you'll start seeing every version of yourself that you buried just to make sure everyone else was okay. And here's the thing, you might be the convenient friend. You might be the convenient partner. You might be the convenient coworker that always says yes. You might be the convenient daughter, son, family member, whatever it is. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter the title because once you've made your life about making other people comfortable, you've already paid a price that no one ever acknowledged. This is the hidden cost of being convenient. So let's just break this down. Nobody wakes up one day and just says to themselves, you know what? I want to make myself smaller. I want to make my needs ignored. I want to silence my voice. I want to carry everyone else's burdens on my back. Nobody says that. This is not a conscious decision, okay? This is a pattern. This is actually a survival skill. And it normally starts before you even knew who you were. So don't blame yourself for being this person. Just recognize that you have this trait of people pleasing. People don't consciously think, I want to be invisible today. Being convenient isn't actually who you are. It's who you were trained to be. And I want to talk through some of the ways that this happens because you may not even know where this came from. You've just been living like this. Number one, you were rewarded for being easy. Some of you might be able to identify with this. You were the kid who didn't really need much. You were praised for that. And they called you mature or independent because you did things like self-soothe at 5 years old. Unrealistic, right? They called you low maintenance because you didn't ask for things that you knew that they weren't going to give you. And I'm not just talking about material things. I'm talking about emotional availability or other things, right? Nurturing. They said you were so well behaved that no one ever stopped to ask if you were actually happy. Being easy to love shouldn't mean erasing parts of yourself just to stay in the room, okay? So just know that. And the worst part of this is that that version of you, the one who didn't ask for anything, was praised for it like it was a gift, but it wasn't. And remember that. That is not a positive thing to never ask for your needs to be met. You didn't get attention for expressing your needs. You got attention for being the one who didn't, the one who said they didn't need anything. So you adjusted. You learned that love was safer when you were quiet. Another way is that you learned that love had conditions. Okay, so maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a partner, maybe it was a friend who made you feel like being wanted came with strings attached, and you learned that being chosen often meant being convenient, being agreeable, being adaptable. I spent so many years of my childhood being that person. So love became a transaction, one where you gave up pieces of yourself just to be accepted. And when you are taught that love is earned through sacrifice, you forget that you actually deserve it for just being. So you started asking yourself less and started asking, what do they need from me right now? And before long, you were so good at molding yourself that you forgot what your original shape even looked like. You started to believe that love comes when you make yourself easier to love, and you carried that into every single space that you walked into. Another way is you got addicted to being needed. And let's be honest, being the go-to person can feel good until it doesn't. And at first, it's affirming. People trust you. They rely on you. They always need you for something, right? They lean on you. And for some people, you enjoy, filling that need for others. If you've never had the experience of being deeply seen or understood, that being consistently needed can be confused for being valued. But here's the truth. Being needed is not the same as being loved. And because people were always calling you and texting you and needing you for something, it made you feel important. But again, being important is not the same as being valued. Don't confuse being relied on with being respected. One fills a gap, the other honors who you are. And over time, being needed starts to feel like a full-time job, one where the pay is low and the benefits are non-existent. But because you were out saving everyone else, no one stopped to ask how you were doing. No one ever offered to carry your load. Another way that this happens is you confuse being accommodating with being kind. And you become kind of addicted to this process of accommodating everyone else, and then everyone thinks you're really, really nice, and then they like you and accept you, and it's a cycle. You thought you were being nice, but really you were just trying not to be rejected. You thought you were being helpful, but deep down you were afraid of being left behind. You didn't want to be a burden, so you didn't ask for too much. You didn't want to do too much. So instead, you became convenient. Do you see how these patterns make you the convenient one? People pleasing is just fear dressed up as kindness. It's not selflessness. It's self-abandonment. And the more people praised you for it, the more you thought, oh, this must be who I'm supposed to be. But it's not. It never was. But you don't just become the convenient one by accident. You were trained to survive by being that way. But now, guess what? You get to ask yourself a different question. Do I want to keep living like this? Hopefully the answer is no. Do I want to keep making other people comfortable at the expense of myself? No. Do I want to keep abandoning myself just so I can be easy to keep around? Absolutely not. No, you do not want to continue to be that way. I'm going to answer it for you. It's not in your best interest to move like that, to operate like that, because here's the truth. You can unlearn this behaviors. You can rebuild. You can come home to yourself, but only if you're honest enough to admit that you were never actually okay with this. Let me tell you something. You were never meant to be the background character in your own life. Okay? So we are going to work hard to eliminate the people-pleasing behaviors. Being convenient feels safe because it guarantees you a spot. You become the friend that's always available, the partner that never complains, the coworker that just takes it all on. It makes you feel useful. It makes you feel liked. It makes you feel needed. And if you've ever felt invisible before, this feeling can be addicting. Being convenient isn't a connection though, it's performance. And have you ever noticed that the people who respect you the least are usually the ones you've done the most for? Why do you think that is? It's because convenience is not respected. And there are invisible consequences that you'll experience when you operate this way. Convenience makes people take you for granted. When you always say yes and you stop and you never are the person to stop and really think about what you want, people expect that you're going to be that way all the time. You lose your identity in that process because you're starting to shape your decisions around what keeps other people comfortable instead of what actually feels right to you, okay? Self-abandonment, which is what this is very subtle. It looks like overthinking or, overcommitting or calling yourselves being nice, but you're not. And people assume you're fine even when you're not. Nobody checks on the strong one, okay? Nobody asks the easy friend if they're okay because they're so used to not asking you those questions and you've trained them not to. This is not being true to yourself, okay? And don't trick yourself into believing that this is a positive trait because it's not. For years, people used to call me indecisive. And for a while, I believed them. I started to wonder if something was wrong with me. Why is it so hard for me to make decisions? I am a direct person. Why was I always looking around for someone else to co-sign what I already knew in my heart or knew in my head, the decision I wanted to make? But what I've learned is I was never actually indecisive. I was just disconnected from myself. And I want you to know, if you're in that boat, you're not indecisive either. You were just never asked what you really wanted, and you were never taught to ask yourself that question. I had spent so much time flexing and molding for everyone else. So used to saying yes, so used to making sure everyone was good, so used to making sure that other people were okay. I never really paused to ask myself if I was. It's like a survival trait. And when you abandon your own voice for long enough, you forget what it even sounds like anymore. And then one day, you wake up and you realize you don't even know what you actually want because you've spent your whole life being who everyone else needed you to be. I want to share something with you because that habit of molding myself didn't actually come out of nowhere. When I was going into high school, my parents moved to a place that wasn't very diverse, and we had moved from a place that was very diverse. So I had a lot of culture shock that was going on. And let me just be honest, it was really traumatizing for me. I was one of the only Black girls in my grade. I was going in as a freshman in high school, and people didn't look like me. They didn't talk like me. They didn't come from the same kind of area that I grew up in. And no matter how hard I tried, I was not accepted, not fully, not freely. And after a while, that pain, it made me shift. I had to shift. So I stopped trying to be liked and I started trying to be tolerated. And when you're just trying to survive in a space that wasn't built for you, people pleasing becomes a protection plan. And it was the protection plan that I adopted. So I started over accommodating. I started over adapting, smiling through things that weren't okay, making myself easy to be around, even if it meant I was hiding who I really was. It was a very painful experience for me. It makes me very emotional talking about it. And that wasn't who I wanted to be. It's who I needed to be to get through that moment. And it's what you do in moments when you need to feel safe because you didn't feel safe operating any other way. And here's the hardest truth about unlearning convenience. At first, it feels wrong. It feels selfish. It feels like you're letting other people down because you've spent your whole life training people to accept you as this yes person, accept your silence, your flexibility, that the first time you choose yourself, they're going to notice and it's going to ruffle some feathers and it's going to make people uncomfortable because they're not used to seeing you like that. And some of them will not like you for it, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're disrupting a system that they've gotten very comfortable with. So I want to talk you through the steps of undoing this, unlearning this, okay? And the first step isn't setting boundaries, believe it or not. It's believing that you're allowed to have them. You can't hold a boundary if you don't even believe you're worth protecting. If you don't walk away with anything from this episode, please remember that. You have to stop seeing yourself as the peacemaker, as the fixer, as the strong one who doesn't need anything. You have to stop performing. You have to stop performing worthiness and start protecting self-trust. That is the key. And if you're wondering how to actually break this habit of being convenient, here's where I want you to start. I want you to ask yourself, what do I want? And be honest about the answer. Not what keeps the peace, not what makes other people comfortable. Erase those thoughts from your mind as you do this exercise. What do you want? Even if it's messy, even if it's inconvenient, even if it makes someone uncomfortable, hell, even if it makes everybody uncomfortable. What do you want? Number 2, let silence do its job, okay? If you say no and they go quiet, let them. If you don't immediately over-explain and someone doesn't know how to sit with that, it's not your responsibility. Their discomfort is not your emergency. It's not. Number 3, some people will not accept or understand the new you or try to understand the new you. When you stop abandoning yourself, the people who benefited from your self-abandonment, they're going to feel it first. And you need to let them. You need to let them shift and let them go. Number 4, choose discomfort over resentment every single time. Setting a boundary might make you feel guilty for like 5 minutes, but saying yes to something you hate or that doesn't honor your peace, that's going to eat at you for days. You're not protecting the relationship if it costs you your peace, okay? So listen, you don't owe anyone the most convenient version of you. You do not. You don't have to keep being the low maintenance person in people's lives to be loved. You don't have to be silent to be accepted. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to disappoint people if it means you stop disappointing yourself. This isn't about becoming difficult. It's about becoming whole. And if this episode brought up anything for you, I want you to know you're not broken for becoming the convenient one. You didn't do it intentionally. You were just surviving. You were adapting. You were trying to be safe in a world that didn't always feel safe for you. But now you're not surviving anymore, and you are allowed to be fully seen. You are allowed to choose you. And maybe that means you're not as agreeable as you used to be. Oh well. Maybe it means you disappoint a few people along the way. Okay. Maybe it means you stop saying yes out of guilt. It also might mean discomfort for others, but you cannot carry that anymore, and you just can't care. I know that that's hard, but you really can't. It might also mean that some people distance themselves from you, and some question your shift, and they say you've changed like it's a bad thing. We're allowed to change, okay? Just because your boundaries make someone uncomfortable does not mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something different. And yes, your shift may challenge others, but it might also inspire others. Because when you give yourself permission to honor your voice, you also give others permission to do the same. When you don't shrink back, when you don't second guess growth, you're giving other people the permission to do the same thing. So don't mistake their resistance for a sign to revert, okay? That's just the sound of old systems breaking. That's what that is. So if you're looking for permission, this is it. You don't have to keep being the most convenient person in the room. And I would encourage you to stop. The biggest risk is not failing. It's staying the same. and you can't change the past, but you can decide on the future. So upgrade accordingly.